This is the final word, Ashes Daily, 5th Test, Day 5, for the very last time in this incredibly lengthy summer. 8 weeks, 8 Test matches, several nervous breakdowns, 1 Jeff Lemon, 1 Adam Collins, 1 Westfield London and 1 Westfield Stratford City.
Indeed.
That's 2 Westfields total, 1 more extra, 1 less ordinary. 5 Test matches in this particular men's Ashes series. Good God, it is over. Adam, do the last day in 30 seconds.
All right, Australia 135 with that loss when they started losing Warner. 5 runs after the resumption. A beauty, an absolute beauty from Woakes. 1 of 4 gets Khawaja as well. Leg before for 72. There's the rain delay. There's the controversy before lunch. Was Smith out? Was he not? Probably not. Certainly not. What am I saying? Then when they return after missing the middle session, they come back. Australia require 146. They come 49 runs within the target, but they lose 7 wickets. And Chris Woakes with 4 wickets, player of the match. Moeen Ali 3 in his final Test match. And Broad goes bang bang at the end. England by 49 runs.
Oh, the patented bang bang. Broad did it. England went bang 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 bang. The 4 wickets for 11 runs across a slide. That's what decided the match. Sure, couple fell early, but Australia got back into it, and Labuschagne didn't make many, but then it was Travis Head and Steve Smith, and they got together and they put on a big partnership. But it's when Travis Head gets out, and then Smith follows straight afterwards, and then Marsh follows straight afterwards, and then Stark follows straight afterwards, and then Cummins, and it goes Moeen, Woakes, Moeen, Woakes, Moeen. Oh, the other way around. Or no, it
was Moeen first. Yeah,
was the spinner first and last out of that 5. It's that 5 for 30 that decides it. I mean, they need 120 before Travis Head gets out with 7 wickets in hand, and at that point you're thinking, well, sure, 384 is a ridiculous chase, but they should get it from here. But there was always that possibility when you've got a chase that big, like we saw with Australia at Lords, even when Ben Stokes goes nuts and makes 155, if you've got a big enough margin to play with, all you need is at some point in that chase, you need the squeeze where suddenly a few fall. And there was always that feeling that England could maybe do it, even though the sun came out. I know Australian supporters have been complaining about not batting in the sun the whole time. It was lovely bright sunshine when Australia shat the bed and lost the Test match.
Fairly well summed up. There was always going to be a twist. You know, that 95 run stand between Smith and Head looked good at times, but skittish at others. And when they got back from the rain delay, Woakes started going past the edge with that regularity that he had done at the start of the day. The ball, that change in the 37th over, that felt significant. Everybody's talking about it, including Chris Woakes. You know,
sure.
There's no shying away from the fact that the ball did change the energy of the match this morning, because suddenly it was moving prodigiously, and that happens. I wanted to state very clearly from the get-go that at Edgbaston in 2019, this happened to England, and they were rightly fuming too in the first innings there when they were enjoying a really good second day. It was Australia who got the benefit of a different ball, rolled them early, won the Test match. You know, these things can happen. It's frustrating that there's no... Sorry, frustrating is the wrong word. It's quirky that the process comes down to like gut feel and just kind of looking at the ball, oh, that looks about right, when clearly, you know, what it says on the side of the ball, 37 overs, not all 37 over old balls are created equal. Some have been clouted and some have been not. Some have been bowled on pitches that are relatively green, and some of them have been bowled on barren pitches where it's taking chunks out of it.
Some of them have been bowled by Sean Tate, for instance, and some have been bowled by Jesse Ryder.
Some have been bowled by, you know, Richard Hadley, who hit the seam every single ball for his entire Test career, you know, and didn't rough up the ball therefore. So there's that going on.
Sure.
But, you know, just the brilliant off-field stuff from England to bring back Moeen Ali. It was a gut call from Stokes. You know, the Ashes question mark, LOL. We've done it many times on the show and it's been remarked upon by everybody, but he plays a huge role on his final day as a Test cricketer with a groin injury. He couldn't run.
When we didn't think he would bowl.
He couldn't run. In that first session when he was hobbling around the field, like, how's he going to get through the crease? Well, whatever they jabbed him with worked. As for Chris Woakes, wasn't picked for the Ireland Test match. Felt like he was so far down the pecking order that he may never be called upon in the Ashes series. Australia went to town on him the last couple of times he's been to Australia, certainly in 2021, 22. He was, I wouldn't say liability, but he never had any purchase with it. The Duke's ball in England, where he takes his wickets at 22, with a ball that's moving, with his tail up, having gotten rid of Warner and Khawaja, the overnight men, to get going at the start of today. He was the perfect guy to throw the ball to. The temptation would have been Broad Anderson to start with. They're 2 old-timers, but they went the other way. They went to the first change in Woakes. They didn't go to Wood either.
Yeah. Who didn't play a huge role. He gets the wicket of Labuschagne with a length ball that wasn't necessarily the kind of ball he was trying to bowl. He was getting the ball to swing, actually.
Nice piece of bowling. Yeah.
Was getting it to pitch up, but he bowls length, and Labuschagne feels for it a little bit and edges one through low.
It's the lost wicket and all, this Labuschagne for 13. They needed one of the players to go the whole way through. And, yeah, Smith gets 50, but after the openers, no one else was able to really go with him, with the exception of Travis Head, who's the first in the sequence, caught from a ball that rags from Moeen. Maybe a shot he didn't need to be playing necessarily from that line, but I kind of get it. That's Travis Head's game. You can't, as we've said over there during the World Test Championship final, you can't carve Travis Head up for playing the way that he does when he gets dismissed that way, and celebrate him wildly when it works, right? That's just who he is.
Also that what he did was come in at a time when things were a little bit precarious at 3 for 169 maybe, and he makes 43 in pretty quick time, and he helps settle Steve Smith into Smith's innings, and because they're scoring at a good rate, that's why they only need 120 when he gets out. Now,
well, he's 22 from 21 at one stage.
I think he should be allowed to get out with 120 to get and expect that the rest of the team will do it, and that's not what happens. So, England are able to tie it up. I think we'll loop back for a second, because I don't want it to all be about the change the ball thing. It's more like that's just something to get out of the way up front. Like you say, it happens all the time. You change the ball, new ones behave differently. Yes, England try to get them to change the ball all the time. Australia do it quite a lot as well. That one was out of shape. It does come down to the umpires and how they manage to pick a shiny new one out of the box. Not new, but maybe 8 overs old. If you have any questions about whether or not it was a sufficiently used ball, they didn't take the actual new ball at 80 overs. They were still bowling with the old replacement ball at 105 overs.
It was
old.
Dream come true stuff for Broad, having one side so shiny it was glistening in the sun, and one side they managed the ball really well. Stokes was just going to work on it on his short sleeve jumper all day long. Anderson as well in the long sleeve jumper. For whatever reason, they like their jumpers for rubbing rather than their trousers these days.
But had it been the original ball, there's no way they're using it after 105 overs.
Well, Brito made this point on Twitter. They were trying to get the first one to reverse. So that's one other point in all of this. They were trying to let it get roughed up in order to get it going a little bit later on. So, it's not sort of as clear-cut as it was an old ball than a new ball. England have made their minds up to let one ball deteriorate. So, again, this is a little bit luck of the draw stuff with what you get pulled out. But I also think, and Ricky Ponting's made this point on telly, I believe, that where's the rigour in the process? I think the gut feel element to it is one thing that might require a little bit more scrutiny from ICC Towers and from those who make decisions on behalf of the match officials. Like, is there a way that this process can be run so it's not a case of fielding teams constantly trying to get the ball changed when it's not moving in the hope that something like today plays out? And
a suggestion was made today, which I quite liked, which is you should have a limited number of requests to change the ball, like a DRS thing. You can challenge for a new ball, twice an innings or whatever it is.
And look, there's the other side of it too, that I've always compared it to a suspension of standing orders in the Parliament. Like, you need to build up momentum by haranguing the Speaker time and time again. He finally grants you that suspension and question time gets called off. Same deal here. You've got to go to the umpire time and time again. They go, for fuck's sake, all right, we'll change the fucking ball, you know what I mean? And I know it goes through the rings, but it's a vibes thing too.
Goes through the ringers. Imagine Stuart Broad in Parliament. He would be at them constantly, just whoever's at the dispatch box, just needling from the second row.
That's a nice thought. Him being on the opposition front bench.
It'll probably happen. He'll be in the House of Lords within 5 years. He's of the right family background or whatever they call it over here. Euphemism time. So the point is this. You get a nice new ball or newish ball and it's doing something. You still have to be able to do something with it. Remember Hashim Amla at Port Elizabeth all those years ago saying, well, it's all very well to get the ball to reverse, but if you bowl me half volleys, I'll still hit you for 4. Chris Woakes bowls an unbelievable starting spell. He comes out with that new ball. It's cloudy. Australia are restarting. They've done so well the day before. 135 knocked off. They've made it into what should be at least an approachable last day chase. You need 250 on the last day. It'll be tough, but you might get it. And the one to Warner that swings in, hits the seam, decks away at the last minute. Warner trying to rehearse the shot to say, well, I should have been playing down this line instead of this line. How could you know that you had to be playing down the other line? You couldn't. It would have been pure guesswork. He goes down the wrong line. He's caught for 60. He doesn't get that farewell 100 that he was dreaming of in England. He leaves England without ever having made one. 83 was his highest score at Lords in 2015. But he made 60 and he put Australia in a position to win.
A few things about the Warner dismissal. You described the ball well. It's an unplayable. Watching Warner repeat the shot a couple of times before walking off, that was just a very sad sporting moment. Knowing that you can love him or hate him. And I don't care whether you love him or hate him for what happened in South Africa. It's in the distant past now in terms of what we're seeing today in front of us. But, seeing a guy who's given it his all to get to where he got into in that innings, to cop a ball like that, it's just straight up sad. And it's to the enormous credit of Chris Woakes. Again, we come back to this. The ball he bowled to Smith later in the day as well. Woakes was all over them. It reminded me of Chris Woakes circa 2016, the summer of Woakes, when every spell he bowled, something happened. He out-bowled Anderson and Broad throughout those 6 test matches in that summer. Bowling spells just like that when he seemed like the most obvious natural successor to James Anderson. That probably won't happen now. He's 34 himself. He said in the post-game wrap-up when he was awarded the Compton Miller that he may not play overseas anymore, but gee, you'd pick him here at home, and while his body's still good for it, while he's still able to do that, he should keep going and going and going.
And the one to Khawaja, that's just classic Woakes. The left-hander facing the right armour over the wicket, swinging it back in, gets it to bend, pitch in line, go on and hit in front of leg stump. Khawaja's become a very compulsive LBW reviewer. Every LBW against him is not out, so that was 3 reds all the way, but he was hoping, I guess, it might be pitching outside leg.
That's what I thought. I thought when
well
seeing
within
it,
the line.
Yeah, when I saw it, I'm like, that might be pitching outside leg. I think I was on commentary at the time, but yeah, you're right, that because it was straightening and the way that it hit him on the pad, it felt like he was gone, and it's the opener's prerogative to review every leg before, isn't it? I don't think we see many openers who cop one and don't send it upstairs.
Well, one for Labuschagne, one for Smith, and now one for Khawaja is how the pecking order goes. He ends up with 40th on the all-time list for balls faced in a series. Khawaja not quite able to see it all the way through.
Finished up making 496 runs at 49.6, facing 1,263 balls.
And then Labuschagne, who actually batted well compared to the first innings, was quite positive. The cover drive, the flick through mid-wicket, looked like he was on for a good one. He gets that ball from Mark Wood that's just quick enough. And Mark Wood hadn't really looked threatening to that point. He'd bowled, 3-4 overs by then, and he'd bowled a few short ones. Labuschagne was going on. He'd bowled some length outside off that was being left alone. And he just bowls length, but it comes back in slightly, and Labuschagne's just feeling for it, edges it through. Zach Crawley today, 3 slip catches, 3 very good ones. He dropped one very late when it was the 9th wicket.
Could have won the test match with an absolute blinder diving across route. I mean, Jeremy Coney makes a good point, a famous second slipper himself. You probably should get 2 hands to that, but had he plucked it out with one to win the test, it would have been one of those iconic Ashes moments.
On all the highlight reels. And so then, 3 down, and then Smith and Head start doing their thing, and they're clouding it around, and Head's sort of going through cover, and Smith started to play some good shots. There's that one cover drive he plays when the ball's really, he gets a wide half volley, and he absolutely nails it. And he was like, oh yeah, I can play cricket. Let's go. Let's do this.
Took him a while, didn't it? After the rain delay, I'm like, wow, he looks, I wouldn't say walking wicket, but he kept playing and missing.
It was a long rain delay, which we didn't even mention.
Yeah, there was
a couple of hours off the field.
And we might come back to the overrate calculation after in the Hall of Fame, but the way in which Smith tried to play a booming lofted drive by the angle of his bat that was a conventional let the ball go on the 4th stump line, and an outswinger at that from Woakes, who was bowling consistent outswingers to him. Then there was the run out that nearly was, where he took off and shouldn't have. It took him a while to get there, but we know Steve Smith does struggle traditionally. The deeper into a test match you go, he's got a pretty poor, middling to poor record batting in the 4th innings of test matches, where he's never made a century.
Well,
had a chance
today.
You
one thing.
Gets a good one.
He made 54 today. He's made 2 55s and a 97 in the 4th innings. They're the only higher scores that he'd made than the 54 today.
And we've missed out on the catch from Johnny Bairstow off Mitchell Marsh. I mean, we've heaped criticism on Johnny for his keeping, partly due to his own words. We don't dislike Johnny Bairstow. Well, I don't know about you. I can speak for me.
No.
I like Johnny an awful lot.
Sure, I have no animus towards anybody.
Sure. Well, you know what I mean, though. Like, I'm particularly fond of the way he goes about his cricket. I don't think he should have kept for a heartbeat in this series. I doubt he'll ever keep for England again. It was a solution for this series in these circumstances, right? In India, it'll be folks certainly, and by the time we get to the next summer, there'll be a number of wicketkeepers putting pressure to come through and bat 7 or 8. However, if this is his last test as keeper for England before returning to bat 5 or 6 or whatever it is, to take that catch off that deflection from Mitch Marsh at that moment, a guy who's in great nick and can turn a test match around in a heartbeat just at the way that he plays the game, the fearless way that he's been striking the ball, that proved absolutely crucial, and that's when Australia looked in disarray.
Well, that's inside edge, inside of the glove, onto the thigh pad. It's turning in from Moeen, and it hits the thigh and bounces out towards the offside. So it's going at sort of 45 degrees from the body, and Bairstow just totally reflex, has time to throw a hand out while he's falling over. This time it wasn't to do with bad positioning, it was just that was the time that he had to try to get a glove to the ball, and somehow clung onto it as he went to the ground. And how important that was at the time, because Mitchell Marsh, the power that he's got, the ability that he would have to, even if he rattles off a quick 40 at that point, it puts Australia probably back into ascendancy in the game. and he doesn't get the opportunity to do it. He's out for 6.
And it soon opens up an end. So
well, we haven't even done the non-catch.
Well, yeah, I was going to come to that. It sort of opens up an end, and eventually they're bowling to the bowlers, right? Stark nicks off. Again, a little bit like Travis said, that's the way he plays. It doesn't look good, but it is what it is to an extent with Stark.
Second
Cummins,
ball, big drive,
yeah,
edge to slip.
That's right. I mean, you can see what he was trying to do, right? Put some pressure back on, but picks the wrong ball to drive at. Again, edging away and all the rest of it. But then
reminds me of Jim Owen's description of Australian rules football with the goal and the point. It's like the only sport where they're like, well, you missed, but we could see what you were trying to do, and your heart was in the right place.
Haven't heard a Jim Owen reference in a while. More of them on the podcast, I say. Maybe we should get him on the show, Jimmy Owen. It was the Cummins dismissal that felt for me like the one. They're just building a little bit of a partnership. He wouldn't have made many Cummins. He made 9 from 14 balls, but batting with Alex Carey. My thought.
They needed 110 when he came in. It was a long way.
No, it was a long way from the finishing line, but we discussed it last night. Muscle memory of being involved in a close chase. I bet you he was down in the indoor nets batting during the rain delay, as he did at Edgbaston before he came out and made an unbeaten 44 there. And he played a couple of nice hard shots to mid-off. He was middling it. Then the inside edge onto the bottom of the bat, onto the thigh pad, balloons up round the corner. Ben Stokes catches it and doesn't throw it away. He sprints with the ball in his hand all the way around because, I suppose, to make a point after the catch that wasn't on the stroke of lunch where it was a controversy, and events have overtaken this, but it was a controversy through the break because it's Smith and who knows, he might go on to be the match winner. And what it boils down to is that Stokes did exactly what Herschel Gibbs did all those years ago, and that kind of happens.
Aside from the fact it was slightly less deliberate. But I don't think it was really controversial because most people from either side of the fence could see why that wasn't out. But if you haven't seen it, it's a glove from Smith who props forward. The ball pops up off the pad. Stokes at leg slip goes up and takes it above his head, and then as his arm swings around behind his body, it just clips his right thigh and it knocks the ball free from his hand. So it looked initially like he'd sort of just tossed the ball away, but he hadn't finished landing and he was still sort of overbalancing backwards. So the umpires look at that. And weirdly, Stokes kind of knew that he'd blown it, and then Bairstow went to him and said, review it, send it upstairs, because the umpires had given it not out. And I can only assume that Bairstow thought that the umpires were saying Smith hadn't gloved it.
Yes.
They look at the replay, you can clearly see the pads on the fingers moving. You can clearly see the glove, but then you see the replay of Stokes not holding onto the catch for long enough. The umpires have no hesitation ruling that's not out.
I get Stokes' perspective on it. Maybe shouldn't have been used as a review. I've never really considered this before, but the checking for the catch being legal... I haven't got a strong view on this, but I understand why Stokes was frustrated about losing a review.
Why did the umpires give it not out? Did they give it not out because they thought the catch wasn't legal?
I think that was it. I mean, they were reviewing on the basis of them having not thought it touched the glove.
So I think, if you've for instance taken you're claiming a low catch and the umpires had a good view of it and says, no, not out, I'm not sending it upstairs, I'm ruling it not out, then you'd have to review. The team would have to review to overturn that.
You're right, it is grey area, but that was the one bit of all of that. People thought that Stokes was cracking the shits. I saw a lot of stuff on my social media replies about, how Stokes tried to cheat and all. No. It's just like, he went upstairs, because if the umpire deems that he's controlled it, well, happy days.
Sure.
And sometimes they break your way, right? It's a subjective thing to a certain extent, as all line ball calls are.
And people make this distinction, which I don't think actually exists, between, in inverted commas, claiming a catch versus making an appeal. Oh, if you claimed a catch that you didn't take, you're cheating. Well, if you claim a catch that you're not sure whether they're going to rule it a catch or not, that's an appeal.
Yeah.
You're not cheating if you ask for an LBW, which is not out, because you're asking for the umpire to make a ruling. So I thought that was perfectly reasonable if you weren't sure. It seemed like he was confused about what had gone on. Okay, fine, check it.
I'm glad events overtook that because that had the potential to really boil over.
Imagine Smith peels off and gets to 80 or 90 from there and wins the Test match. Be quite the thing.
Todd Murphy looked a likely type again. What
toddy.
An impressive Test match. 6 wickets with the ball, 36 briskly in the first innings to get Australia a first innings lead. 18 from 39 balls here for a time when they came together.
Put on
8 wickets down.
with Carey.
Well, when they were 8 wickets down, 90 runs to get. It was 90 runs at Melbourne in 1982, and don't think I wasn't straight into that scorecard. It was 107 at Edgbaston in 2005, if you're wondering. Australia, of course, with Border and Thompson, lose by 3 runs famously. But it did have that energy. It felt like Murphy was scoring the singles he needed to score at different points through the partnership. Carey was just keeping the board ticking over at regular enough intervals as well, absorbing most of the deliveries. He was trusting Murphy earlier and earlier in the over.
I didn't think he absorbed enough of them. I thought Carey was getting off strike too early in the over, and he gave Murphy too much work to do with Stuart Broad. I thought that was a flaw in their partnership.
Yeah, maybe
and eventually
so.
Broad does get Murphy.
But they were quite deep into it, I guess. He faced 39 balls. I see your point, but Murphy, I guess what I'm getting to is Murphy looked quite accomplished.
Sure.
He looks like he actually is technically quite a good cricketer when it comes to holding the bat, and that will increase his reputation because these days, as we know, unfair as it is, spinners need to be able to bat.
Yep.
I don't know why fast bowlers aren't held to the same standard, but it seems like in global cricket, if you're a spinner, there's an expectation you can bat as well.
I think you'll find if you go through that partnership, which I haven't done the numbers, but I think you'll find Broad bowled a lot more deliveries at Murphy than he did at Carey, and I thought that Carey stuffed that up.
And then Broad, I mean, it's Hall of Fame worthy, but we won't put it there necessarily, changes the bails. And what do you know? The magic of that bloke sometimes in Ashes cricket.
The arsiest bastard. If you have like an arsey bastard column, S Broad, that's where it is.
The next ball, after doing that, gorgeous delivery to find Murphy's edge. Bairstow takes the catch. They're all off celebrating in front of the Peter May stand. Bairstow gives it these ones, gives it the fist pumps, but doesn't move. He's on his haunches, on his knees for the duration of the celebration. Probably so grateful that he pouched it, knowing that he dropped easier chances through the series.
Yep.
There's a similar take to get rid of Carey as the last wicket to fall, just when that partnership, it wasn't gathering any steam, but they might have batted for 4 or 5 overs, and it was so fitting that it was Broad. You know, we celebrated it on commentary, and we can again hear that it's just right that it was him moving the ball, 2 left-handers. His last ball in Test cricket with the bat goes for 6, and his last delivery claims his 604th and final Test wicket.
Wow. I wonder if anyone else has got that, because we were talking about the last ball for 6 club, which is pretty
small. Oh, yeah,
small.
someone told me at the pub last night that has happened before. I wish I remembered. No, okay. Certainly the 6.
Yeah, but is there anyone who's also got a wicket with their last
Improbable.
ball?
There'd be quite a few getting a wicket with their last ball. Dennis Lilly, but
Sure, there are lots getting a wicket with the last ball, but the 6 and the wicket, I mean, it may be a club of 1, who knows. I want to know if the swapping over things becomes a habit for him from now on. Like, say he's at home and he's tackling a difficult recipe from, I don't know, the New York Times cooking page or whatever. Does he swap the salt and pepper canisters over just to bring himself good luck? Does that become a thing? A couple of
I'm sure it's going
to
come up on commentary for the next 30 or 40 years.
Swap the bails.
It'll be part of his after-dinner speaking routine forever as well. He's added a couple of extra anecdotes for that when he goes on the speaking circuit as players like him.
Use it as a sort of, one of those sayings when you're psyching yourself up. All right, time to go. Swap the bails. Let's do it.
Right, Jeff, for the final time in this series, let's go to the final word, Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame, where we do the final word, things that we liked and didn't like that day, brought to you by Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City. My Lord, have we not told you about these places? These large shopping and other lifestyle complexes in London, one in the east, one in the west. If you don't know about them by now, you have not been listening. More
iconic east and west than Berlin when the wall was up. Try something new this summer. Now the summer is complete because, of course, the cricket stops now for a month. There's not a test match until the 28th of November. Maybe it's the 23rd of November in the world.
Wow.
That's it for a long time. Free games, exercise classes, hobby sessions, arts and crafts for people of all ages in this month of August when there's very little cricket on. There's a few things going on, but nothing that we necessarily cover. There's sip and paint sessions, cheese and kombucha tastings. I had kombucha once. Journaling, which is good for you. Flower arranging. Flower arranging workshops. It really sounds like, basket weaving. I used to give
underwater basket weaving.
I used to give grief in Senate estimates to public servants about their basket weaving classes and all that kind of thing. Disco yoga and so much more. Maybe we will do the disco yoga. Out of all of that, I'm most interested in a hot vinyasa class involving disco. God knows I need to get back into yoga sooner rather than later, or I might explode. It's all on the Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City. More extra, less ordinary. I haven't said it in a while. Dingers!
Crack out the glow sticks and get into the disco yoga. Now, Halls of Fame. The general match of umpires, Wilson and Dharmasena. Look, we try to support umpires on this show. We know it's a difficult job. We try not to get stuck into them. But the fact that after many overturned incorrect decisions, which can happen, I understand that, and after somehow not looking at the balls that they picked out of the box by picking one that looked nothing like the previous one, even though they had both of them there. So making a bad decision is one thing, it's rushed, it's quick. Holding two objects and saying, are these comparable? That's different. Then they're like, okay, time to calculate the number of overs left after the rain delay. 52 overs left in the day. 37 overs need to be bowled before we enter the last hour. We're starting at 4:20 p.m. Well, hang on, we're going to be here till 9 o'clock. And then we find out that they've miscalculated and added 5 overs on too long because they forgot to take off the overs for the tea break, which they'd already had. So it comes back to 47 overs.
And even that
was never going to happen.
I'm asking, okay, I'll put it out there. If you're an umpire, can you tell me how this works? 100 minutes between the resumption and when the final hour was starting.
Which is enough time for 25 overs on conventional estimates.
25 overs. They lost 2 from the first session, 27. I'll give them that. 27 plus 15 equals 42. Where the fuck does 47 come from? 52 was just gobsmacking. Would have been here all fucking night.
And then after all of this, they go onto the field, having said this, having sent this around, all of us are breaking our heads over it for literally, I think, half an hour. And then at the end of an over, umpire Wilson wanders up to Ben Stokes and starts having a chat. We're like, what's going on?
You'll have to change your decision, Joel.
Spinners? Are they saying he has to bring the spinners on? The light wasn't bad. It was better than it had been for half the test match. A bit cloudy. Like, what's going on? Joel said, sorry, we stuffed up the calculations. It's only 47 overs.
Oh, Joel.
Imagine that. The climb down. Having to go and tell the fielding captain.
I wonder if the fourth umpire radio through to him. You're going to have to. I'm afraid you're going to have to change your decision, Joel.
It's just sad that Martin Saggers wasn't fourth umpire today. He was a Hall of Famer for me at Old Trafford, just wandering around stabbing his umbrella in the ground for 3 days. Saggers ashes, I called it then.
Yes, it was David Milnes this week. If you're wondering for your scorecards, mine is simply this. This was sent through by, let's just call him a listener. Play resumed at 4:20, and the partnership between Head and Smith at the time was 69. Nice. Light it up on 69.
Double, triple, nice. I mean, that is a dangerous place to do it, I got to say. You need to be very aware of where everything is and that everybody is on board with that decision.
A very final word note to leave it on. This is the last daily. We're going to do an Ashes wrap-up also for Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City. We'll share more love about them then, but thank you to them for the end of this particular part of our series. We look forward to working with them in the future.
One more Hall of Fame. Now, this slipped my mind. Now, a section of our listenership was playing a game called Combat Listening.
Oh, yeah.
And in Combat Listening, you had to listen to each episode before a new episode came out.
Yes.
If 2 episodes were in your feed, you were out. And it whittled down from, several dozen people down to about 9 true stayers who were really getting through the last part. And then a further rule was introduced that you had to listen to the Daily Show before the next day's play began, right? So you couldn't wait until the end of the day. You had to get in early. Now, Stuart Broad retired while we were doing a show. We didn't know he'd retired.
Oh, yeah.
So we recorded another show.
Cat amongst the pigeons.
We recorded another show the next morning. It was released at 10:18 a.m., 42 minutes before the start of play. It was 21 minutes long.
Right.
The umpire, John O'Halen, ruled that counts as a daily show. It says final word daily in it.
Oh, yeah.
Thus, you need to have listened to it before the start of play. So 5 of the remaining 9 were knocked out by the Stuart Broad show on the second last day. Bless you all for playing. Your commitment to the cause has been unbelievable, and for the most part took it with very good grace.
For those of you who aren't on Patreon and enjoying the Discord community, they do fun things like that. They also do fun things like bring 20 people to the cricket together. Pub nights, live shows, all of that. And we talk a lot with them and we adore them for the support of our show. If you found us during the Ashes, and this is kind of a thing you've just kind of tapped into for this particular series, we do this shit all the time. We make daily shows, we make weekly shows, we do interview shows, and believe you me, we have one of our biggest interviews ever coming up in a couple of days from now. We recorded it before the last test match. Not a cricketer, but someone ensconced within the game, and someone, I would say, with a greater Twitter following than anyone we've had on the show, maybe more than Harsha.
Join the dots, maybe more than Coley, who knows?
More than Coley, who knows?
But yeah, so the last point being that yes, Broad took 2 and he didn't take 5 in his last test match, but in that burst on the final word, nerd pledge, combat listening, he took 5 to end the Ashes in a spectacular style.
Patreon.com/the final word. Stick with us throughout everything else that we do. There'll be an Ashes wrap-up tomorrow, a weekly show the day after that, the interview the day after that, story time after that, for we cannot stop and we won't stop on the final word. Thank you so much for the kind comments through the series. Always appreciated. We love doing this. We love our audience. That's it. Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City, more extra, less ordinary. England victorious by 49 runs. They square the series, and more on the series as a whole tomorrow. Good night.
See ya.